Welcome to the Program Review Qualitative Measures Report. This presentation will highlight how to complete this form and really also highlight the purpose. So let's start there with the purpose. The purpose of a program review is to review and assess, not just report data, but to actually review and assess your program holistically. The best way I can describe it is by actually giving your program a bird's eye view. That means kind of act like an external reviewer coming into your program to assess its effectiveness. And for the institution, you're also assessing its worthiness. That's very important. So now that we have a better understanding, let's talk about the program review process as it pertains to the strategic planning process here at the institution. Right now, our program reviews are on a 3-year cycle. That means every 3 years you'll do a program review. Please note that this could change. This would change by our accreditation committee team or institutional effectiveness. But for now, we're using a 3-year cycle. For all programs at Lawson State, this new process will begin in January 2018. Now keep in mind, we've always had a program review process, but under this new reporting template, we're all going to start anew in 2018. If you are in the culinary arts department, computer science, business, or HVAC and nursing and dental, your report will be due on June the 1st. However, all other instructional programs, your report is due by February 15th. Understand that the February 15th date is a hard deadline because the original date was December of 2017. So keep that in mind. So let's get started. Let's take a look at Section 1. Section 1 has several areas in it, and I'm going to scroll down just so you can kind of see. There are several sections for Section 1, and then you'll see Section 2 begins with faculty and personnel. So we're just talking about Section 1 in its totality. The first rule of thumb whenever completing a program review is that under each we have provided you with very detailed information as to what you should include. You need to follow this and always review it before moving from one section to the next. So even a lot of times what can happen as you're typing into these sections, you get so caught up into that one question, like maybe you're talking about historical background. You get so caught up that you forget that you were also supposed to talk about achievements. So always go back and read all. Right now this one has 4 points. You're supposed to talk about your historical background. That means, when did your program start? How long did it start? Were these two programs merged together during the merger, or was it just a standalone program and it sustained itself through the merger? How is your program unique? Is it the only one at the college? Is it the only one in the state? You see the uniqueness of your program. Also, and this is very important, look at number 3. What is your relevance? What's the relevance of the program? Here you're trying to obviously support and talk about why it is relevant. Is this still a high wage, high demand job? Or if this is a 4-year degree program, is it still relevant, right? Is it still relevant in the marketplace? That means that should we be offering this degree to transfer to the 4-year college because it is a marketable degree? Also under 4, you want to look at the milestones that have achieved over the last 5 years. That means you're really looking at the whole entity of your program and saying, what are your achievements of this program? What has happened? Look at your enrollment. Has it growing? Was that an achievement? Did you achieve accreditation since the last time you did a program review? Are you moving forward and you're working towards accreditation? So here you're talking about really looking at your program. Have you increased the number of faculty members? It could be a great amount of things that you can talk about here. I also want you to note that this is a adjustable form. So you're not just limited to the little space that we provide you. In fact, that space doesn't mean just write that. It's just a space. So just continue to write, and you can just hit the enter key and it'll keep on growing for you. Okay? So remember, this is a template and these boxes don't represent a particular size. Okay? The next area is program admission and awards. If you have a unique program, we're asking you to discuss it here. Nursing comes to mind. So Lawson State has an open door policy, but if you have a unique a unique admission process within Lawson State, then you need to highlight that. Also, you want to break down the types of awards that your students can receive under this under your program, and the credit hours. You want to break that down. Also, you want to highlight the essential functions as you see right here, and this is very important to highlight those essential functions. And also, notice the last part, the selection process and any impact the process has had on improving your program. So essential functions should be evaluated, and I want to stress this. All of us have some type of intake process, whether you realize it or not. You may not have it written down, but the essential functions are there, and they should guide your program. That means that, for instance, if a student comes to you and they're a welding student, right, and they have some type of disability that would hinder their safety in the lab. So I won't name that disability, but it would hinder their safety in the lab. So that is something that you would actually have to address, because we need to ensure that that person, number one, doesn't hurt themselves, that they can actually carry forward with the essential functions in that program, and that also they can be employed. All these factors matter. Now, please note that would not be for you to decide, but it would be for you to address it with the college as a whole to ensure that we are not placing students in programs where they cannot be successful. So it has a lot of ramifications, even some legal ramifications, but remember, never go out there on your own. Just communicate with your supervisor and possibly ADA if the student falls under ADA. Obviously, if we can accommodate to meet those needs, we need to accommodate to meet those needs. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone that even with the accommodation, we couldn't meet that need in terms of fulfilling the essential functions. See, that's the difference. Okay, so the next area is student demographics. Here you have two things you have to do. One, you have to complete both charts. You can contact Jamie Glass to assist you in gathering the necessary data to complete this section, or one part of this section. We're looking for how many males are in your program, females, their ages, their ethnicities, and then you're going to break down, you take that raw number and then create a percentage out of that raw number over here on the right. But the most important thing about this is this. Remember earlier I said a program review is not about just dumping data. That is not what we're interested in doing. We're asking you to collect that data over the last 3 years so that you can analyze any trends in your area. For instance, if you only have, I'll go back to, let's say it's nursing. You're in the nursing profession, but we only have females in the nursing profession. Well, that's not very diverse. So, and maybe there's only females between the ages of 18 and 25, right? So they will be able to look at this trend and say, wait a minute, we need to diversify. We need more males. We need older students, you see, that may be looking for a second career, and that from there they can form sort of a strategic plan to improve those enrollment trends. So down below here it talks about you need to review the data above, and that's what I meant by program reviews and why we do them. Do you see any trends that are encouraging or discouraging as it relates to diversity within your program? Has diversity been an issue for your program? Discuss how your program has been addressing diversity and what are the challenges and the milestones achieved as it relates to diversifying your program. So all of these questions should be addressed in this box below. So remember what I said, always go back and make sure before you go from one section to the next section, go back and make sure you've answered all of the questions. Next, it's modes of delivery for both CTE and general education. Here there are 5 specific questions. How your program is delivered, whether it's a traditional delivery, hybrid, distance education, a combination. The location and the sites that are used to support this program, is it on both campuses? What do the sites look like? Also, the quality of those programs. Don't just put things like, oh, we have decent classrooms. That's not enough. You really need to break down, again, you're reviewing the program. You're given a bird's eye view. Now you're actually flying down into the buildings and you're assessing. You are assessing the quality. If your labs are not up to par, if you've got mixed max chairs in there, that's not good. So you would actually say, no, we need to improve in terms of our learning environment. You know, while some labs, you know, lab 12 is decent, it has X, Y, and Z in it, lab 4 is not, and you outline why not. You want to talk about the upkeep of the labs, the upkeep of the equipment. And for Gen Ed, this could be your science labs, this could be your gymnasium, this could also be your classrooms. You want to go in and look to see what is going on, how do they look, is the technology there, the functionality of laboratories as well as classrooms, though, to include science labs, writing labs, computer labs. If you have a computer lab and 30 computers are in there but only 11 are working, it needs to be outlined here. Now, this is very important because what you're doing is that you're assessing quality of delivery of instruction. And you need to be, you know, truthful and forthright about it, because we can use this data to link it to identifying areas that we need to improve college-wide. So we can go in and say, okay, clearly, you know, Cherie Davis reported that the developmental lab on the Bessemer campus in A106 has failing systems and she needs additional monies to be funneled to support that lab, right? Or maybe it's 254 on the Bessemer campus, or maybe it's C103 on the Birmingham campus. But if you never report it and then you ask for money, we can go back to your program review and say, hey, you never reported that there was an issue at all. So why should we then give you additional, you know, $20,000 when you did not even report there was an issue? So program review process is a very serious process, and it is an expectation that you give us an accurate description of what's going on in your program. Okay? It can come back to help you, it will never hurt you. Remember, these are not report cards. We don't assess programs like report cards. We want to know what's going on and how to best improve it. It's all about improvement. This next one, you'll love me for this one because I don't even have to increase the box here, because this section, they really wanted us to actually write in our unit goals and outcomes, but I felt that was sort of ridiculous because we already have them written. We do our unit goals and our outcomes, which is your student learning outcomes, every single year at Lawson. So all you have to do is attach the last 3 years of your unit plans to this document, as well as your SLOs. Okay, so just attach everything to this document and you're covered here. The next box deals with accreditation status. Does this program fall under, we're asking, does it fall under a separate accreditation body, separate from SACS, okay, like ASIN or NATEF, something like that? If yes, then you need to continue to write. You want to talk about when are you scheduled for your next review. You want to discuss your current status and any recommendations that they have given you that you're currently working on. I would also recommend that you attach your accreditation letter here. This is the letter that either tells you that you've cleared and when your next upcoming visit will be, or this is the letter that tells you, no, you're not clear, but we're continuing your status, but you have a recommendation. So you need to include that and attach it to your program review. If you are, and you can also talk about things like if you might need other things to help you to get cleared in terms of accreditation. Or if you're moving towards accreditation, you need to talk about that in this section and identify what your needs are. The next section deals with adequacy of faculty and engagement. And engagement is dealing with professional development. And again, like I said in all the other sections, you always want to double check, read specifically what we're asking you. The first part is dealing with faculty ratios, and we're looking to see if in fact you have enough full-time faculty. So full-time faculty, you're going to and it tells you how to do this. You double click the chart and it's going to pull up, it interfaces, it'll pull up the chart and you can hit edit data and put in your data. So these numbers aren't real, this is just a template. So just go ahead and put that information in, how many full-time faculty members you have versus part-time faculty members. this. And by the way, you can manipulate this chart. You can manipulate. Sometimes you won't see everything. Like for example, if it comes in short like that, see that? And one of the sections disappeared. If you drag it down, it'll show again. There you go. So don't be afraid. You can manipulate these documents to suit you as you're building your report. Okay. So if something looks odd on yours, don't panic. Sometimes these things disappear. There you go. Just pull it down. Did it again, and it'll show. All right, so this second chart deals with the number of sections, because see, sometimes it looks like we don't have enough faculty until we actually break down how many full-time faculty members are teaching how many sections versus part-time. So we want to see the ratio again, and then we're looking at we're looking at professional development in terms of how many full-time faculty members are engaging in professional development versus part-time, okay? Because we have to treat all faculty the same and have access. Now remember, we do have CTEL, which is professional development online, in case you're having some trouble getting your part-timers to embrace professional development. So first you build those numbers in, and then you answer the questions, okay? And remember, these boxes can expand. So it states, after you build your numbers, discuss what is the ratio that you've discovered, or whether or not the data indicates that you have enough full-time faculty to adequately support your program. You've got to make that case. You either do or you don't, but it's not just about, what you don't want to do is this. I'm going to show you. You don't want to do this. So if you write something like this in a program review, it's going to get sent back to you. We have adequate faculty to support our program. What would be wrong with that? Well, first of all, it's not an analysis of anything. It's just a statement without any support around it. So in order for you to state that you have adequate faculty to support your program, you've got to write narrative. You have to explain, well, what makes it adequate? Have you compared it to other programs? So if how do you know it's adequate? So you got to break down that data and make your case. So this program review only happens every 3 years, right? So, and that's why, because it's not just about writing something really quick just to finish the report. You're actually analyzing it and making a case, and you are building your case, and it requires some writing. It does require some writing. And so you need to talk about what makes it adequate. You will go over the numbers again, but how are you justifying the adequacy of that, okay? And make your case. And you can't make it in one sentence. Okay, the next is whether or not your faculty have adequate professional development opportunities. You have to break that down. What opportunities did they engage in, and how are you making that determination that they're adequate? It doesn't just happen simply because you say it's adequate. That might be the best way to kind of look at it. So state your case and support it. The next, we're in section 3. This is instructional strategies employed. And again, all you have to do is simply follow it one by one. And this is what I would recommend. This is what I would do if I was working on a program review. I would copy and paste the questions. And then, this is just a little cheat sheet. And I would do just like this. And in this way, this is a really good strategy. In this way, you are seeing, you're not going to miss anything. And if it doesn't pertain, you can just say, hey, this doesn't pertain to me. But in that way, you know now that you're not going to miss any part of what's being asked of you in this report. So you talk about use of technologies, innovative approaches, the quality and success of online and hybrid courses, if it's applicable. If not, just put not applicable. But I would still leave it there. Methods for and success of soft skills instruction. You know what soft skills is. How are you working on that with our students? And you talk about that. Methods for and success with increasing or maintaining academic rigor and integrity across the curriculum. So these are, again, these are not short little questions for you to just put one little statement, but you're actually elaborating and discussing, because we all know it's a 3-year report and you've analyzed these things over a period of 3 years. Okay, so I just showed you a little cheat sheet of how to make sure you address all questions under each section of this report. So do that approach for each section of the report and you'll be good to go. Student learning outcomes, again, Same thing that I said earlier, just like I said under unit planning, you are to just simply attach the SLOs for the last 3 years for this section instead of rewriting all that. Aren't you happy? You don't have to rewrite your unit outcomes. You don't have to rewrite your student learning outcomes. And let me see, let me make one more, let me make a correction. I believe I said up here to attach your SLOs. I was mistaken. Sorry about that. You'll just attach your unit plans up here. And I guess I was thinking about this section. And you'll attach your SLOs for this section. Okay? Adequacy of program support and effectiveness. Again, do the little trick that I showed you earlier. This is for notice this is broken down. For CTE, you follow up here. For Gen Ed, you follow down here. Now here you're talking about overall effectiveness of your program. This is typically the largest part of the program review where you're going to spend a lot of your time. For CTE, we're talking about job placement results if you have them. And notice this, discuss some or all. The reason why we put it like that instead of saying all is that we recognize that some programs don't have all of this data, but some do. So it's up to you to decide what you have. Not up to you to decide, it's just based on what you have, right? So the first one is job placement results. If you have those, if you collect that information and you have it, you need to report it. Program completion rates, that's for all of us. You can get your program completion rates from Jamie Glass. So we know that number 2 will be reported. But notice this, we're talking about typically for a program review over about 3 years, not just 1 year. So keep that in mind. We're talking about a 3-year span of time. Student services support structures to include early alerts, tutoring, and career coaching. Here we're talking about what are you doing in terms of intrusively advising or helping your students to stay in your program. Also, library usage of materials. Can you work with the library to show that your students are engaged? We do have library liaisons. You'll talk about that. Anything that you can demonstrate to show that you are using the resources to support your program that are in the library. Also, for number 5, online support and distance education students, if you have those, you want to talk about how those students are doing in terms of effectiveness in their academic courses, as well as connections with the library, as well as just their matriculation out of your program. Also, for 6, clinical practicum internships, apprenticeships, you want to talk about those opportunities and the successes therein. That's really important. So you're not just reporting on, I think in this section, whether we're talking about Gen Ed or whether we're talking about CTE, you're not just reporting data. It's not the program review is not just about a data dump. You're talking about effectiveness. So if you say your program completion rates have increased, you want to talk about, well, how? What have you done to help them increase? It's not just reporting that they've increased. Under Gen Ed, you can see we're looking at transfer percentages. We're looking at how they do when they transfer. We're looking at STARS and whether or not they're using that. We're looking at student services. Same thing, tutoring that we mentioned earlier, the library, internships, the same type of thing. Okay? So you're selling your program, and we put a big chunk here. Again, it could be, you can increase or decrease the size of this section. Next is dealing with, section 5 is dealing with adequacy of program resources. Here, you want to complete the chart, right? And let's take a look at what this chart is dealing with. As previously noted, discuss whether or not your program is adequately funded to support your program. And basically, you're just trying to show the funds allocated for your program. And you want to compare it over a period of at least 3 years. So you want to show your funding for all programs, for your program, and funds used. So it's not just, it's allocated and it's usage. So here we're assessing, first of all, is your program adequately funded? And second of all, are you using those funds? So you're going to fill in this chart, and then you're going to answer the questions below, which deal with adequacy overall. You're assessing, was your program adequately funded? And what adequacy of funding provided to support instructional classrooms. You want to talk about the things that you've purchased and how that has ultimately supported instruction, whether it's labs or classroom. For section 6, you're dealing with employer satisfaction. For CTE programs provide, your current program satisfaction. Here we're submitting what you have in terms of graduate surveys, alumni surveys, early exit non-completer data. If you do not have graduate surveys specific to your program, you need to begin. We do have general ones, but this is very easy to do. You can do a satisfaction survey with your students specific to your program through SurveyMonkey. All you have to do is contact Academic Affairs. We can do that through CTEL. So if you haven't been doing that, you need to start. Okay, so alumni surveys, if you have them, early exit non-completer data, advisory committee satisfaction surveys, employer satisfaction surveys, and you want to interpret these results. And notice again, you'll see the some but not all statement, okay? But you really, and one thing I would say, if you don't have employer satisfaction results, I know that some of you do not collect that data, that's all the more reason to have, stronger graduation results. Right? Or either try to tackle a way to reach out to your graduates, do a graduate exit survey that gathers their home number, their cell number, their general email account outside of Lawson State. You've got to show some kind of effort that you're making to gather this type of information. The same is true for transfer success, the CAP results, alumni service, the same kind of thing is reported here. And again, if you're missing something, you can skip it, but make sure it's not something that you could have actually collected. Now, this is my favorite part. We're getting close to the end of this report. This is actually my favorite part of the report is a SWOT analysis. And essentially, you're going to use this chart. You're going to work with your team. This is not a report. This is not a part of the report that you do in isolation in your office. This section, you want to work with all of your team members, and you want to identify specific strengths in your program, weaknesses, obstacles, and threats to your program. And again, you're going to follow. It's very detailed. There are 10 specific questions that each area, whether it's CTE or Gen Ed, should answer. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can see them clearly. We're looking at pass rates if they're applicable to you on your licensure exams. We're looking at connections with local business and industry for CTE, service learning projects, advisory board success. How often do you meet with your advisory boards? Attach those minutes if you can. Hopefully you should have all that. Faculty, this goes into all different types of areas. For Gen Ed, it's kind of the same thing, accreditation achievements if it's applicable, your pass rates in your Gen Ed classes, your CAP results, your satisfaction surveys. Again, if you're not doing those program surveys, satisfaction surveys, you need to get started. Your transfer success, your faculty service, how they are participating in professional development. It goes on and on and on. So on this one, it looks like there's 12 for the general education area. So this is the meat. This is the bulk of it. And you are specifically focusing on targeted areas of strength and weakness. So then, for this analysis piece, it's going to ask you specifically, once you got together as a team, what did you actually recognize as your greatest weaknesses, obstacles, and threats? Areas need improvement as you move forward, and how do you intend to address these areas of weakness in the upcoming year? So what's happening is that the program review moves from this document of kind of reviewing the past and the past 3 years and assessing all this stuff to, at the end, it's propelling you to move forward by specifically identifying your weaknesses, that ultimately those weaknesses need to show up on your unit plan. So this is very important. So I'm going to kind of type this, that your weaknesses at this part, so weaknesses identified in the program review should show up in the unit plan. Now it could show up if the weaknesses were identified with, if they're student related or teaching related, they would probably like you show up in the SLO. So there should be some type of connection. So we should see a link between your program review and it going right to your unit plan. If not, we've just did all this work for nothing. So I want you to think about that and making sure, particularly our department chairs and our directors, that's your job to ensure that those weaknesses that are identified show up in either the unit plan or the SLOs, okay? So that is so important. I can't stress that enough. Also, future outlook. This is the last part before we get to recommendations. Based on the completion of the program review, including the SWOT analysis, rate and discuss the future outlook of this program. Within your discussion, share what internal and external conditions are expected to affect the program. What's going on could be something in the business industry, right? It could be something at the community, at the four-year college level. Maybe there's a closure of a program. You just never know. Consider current labor market data projections for CTE and gen education majors, as well as changes in industry that employs graduates and changing economic conditions. Considering all that you have written as it relates to the overall future outlook of this program, how would you rate it? So you're going to actually have to rate your program. So does it have an outstanding outlook? Does it have a good outlook? Or is it below average outlook? I can't stress this section is extremely important. It's something that obviously the president's interested in, the administrative cabinet is interested in, and you and your team should be interested in as well. So the last thing we have left is recommendations. What recommendations, takeaways came out of your last review, meaning this current review? I probably might need to say current review. Update this report in terms of your progress in addressing those recommendations for improvement from the previous report. Oh, I'm sorry. This section actually links. What's going to happen, you actually do this section as we go through one cycle to the next. They're going to say, go back and look at the last review, right? And then update this report in terms of your progress in addressing those recommendations for improvement from the previous report. This section, as long as you have linked those weaknesses to the unit plan, you'll be fine in filling this out. So for this year, you will not fill this out. This will be empty because we're on a new form. So this will actually be filled out in the next report. Okay? Or if you can go back and find your last review, let me make a correction. If in your last review, I would say go back to your last review, look for any areas of weakness. And if you can highlight or find some areas of weakness that was in your last report, you can use this. And if not, you can also use your unit plan. You can go in your unit plan and say, okay, what areas of weakness were we working on? So in that way, I'm going to scratch what I said earlier, and then more I think about this. So let's just do this. This is going to be the game plan. Go back to your last program review and see if there were any areas of weakness that you can identify. If you cannot find any there, then go to your unit plan, okay, or go to your SLO report. And you can then identify clearly some areas of weakness that you had to work on as a department and report them here. Then, after we do this new report or new program review, 3 years out, you'll be able to go and look at this program review and then continue the trend from that point forward, from the areas of weakness identified. Fair enough? Okay, well look, we got through this training. I hope that you will take the process for program review very seriously, and also remember there are several sections in this report, but this is not a one-man or one-woman show. You should never attempt to do a program review in an office by yourself. It is best to meet as a team and divide out the responsibilities and the sections. Each person in your group should have a particular section to complete. Now that's just my recommendation. I can't mandate that. I can only recommend that. But I can say this. This is not a one-man or one-woman show. So that is a mandate. So you cannot do this by yourself. Okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to contact my office. My name is Dr. Cherie Davis. I am the Academic Dean here at Lawson State. and manage a lot of the institutional effectiveness procedures here at the institution. So please reach out. I'm here to help.